Welcome to the Revere Veterans Corner, in conjunction with the Revere Veterans Service and the Revere Allied Veterans Council. We have a good group of veterans here today to honor Veterans Day, and I would like to introduce you from my left, Miss Eileen Merullo, Mr. Fred Sannella, Mr. Bruce Dobson, and on my right is the Counselor Bob Haas, a veteran, who also, by the way, saved the building which I am part of, the Senior Center. So, Bob, I want to thank you. Now, today we have a real special guest, a real hero, I could use the word, George Tirro, who is also from Revere, and I'd like to read a little about Mr. Tirro. He was inducted March the 6th, 1941. He served with Company I, the 101st Infantry, the 26th Yankee Division till January 1943. Was then sent to Company I, 328 Infantry, still the 20th Division, in January 1944. He was then sent to Company F, 117 Infantry, 30th Division. Served in England and entered Omaha Beach, France, June the 12th, 1944. Was hospitalized in England. After hospitalization, he was sent to the 130th Chemical Company in England in March 1945. The company was then sent to Nancy, France, and after Nazi Germany surrendered, then was sent to the 114th Chemical Company for 3 weeks. Then he was sent to the 66th Chemical Company at Panamous in France. Then was sent to the 60th Chemical Company as Japan surrendered. After that, he was sent home under the point system and was finally discharged October the 11th, 1945. So, Mr. George Tirro, thank you for serving our country, and the rest of the forum is all yours, sir. Take it away.
Well, what you said there is the reason why I was sent from one company to the other was after hospitalization. They did not send me back to the front lines. As I was wounded in my left leg and died. The muscle was cut and tied together, and being that I had trouble walking was why they sent me after hospitalization, which was in England. They sent me to the 130th Chemical Company. Then they sent us to Nancy, France, and when Germany surrendered, they were sending the 130th to Japan, to Japan, to be in against Japan, and somehow or other, through the doctors that we were seeing at the time, he said, this man does not go. So that was why I went from the 130th to the 114th. And 3 weeks later, the 114th was going to the Pacific. So they took me out and put me into the 66th Chemical Company. And from there, we went to Pont-a-Mousson, which was next to Nancy, France. And in September, they were sending the 66th to the Pacific. So that was why I went to the 60th Chemical. But I no sooner got there, Japan surrendered. And being that sent home on the point system, and I had many points, I was only 1 week with the 60th. They discharged me and sent me home. I am one that retraced the steps. I don't know how many might have done that. When I was inducted into the Army in March 6, 1941, I believe there was 96 of us from Revere put on a bus in front of City Hall, taken to the Commonwealth Armory, where we met others that were being inducted from more cities and towns around Boston. At that time, you had to be 5 feet tall, 106 pounds, and 1/8, meaning nothing wrong with you. One of my friends from Revere, it's how funny things happen to be, was not accepted because he had over 4 teeth missing in his mouth. Nothing else wrong with him. In 1942, they took him in, and before I know it, I'm still in the States. There he is fighting Rommel in Africa. But we'll get back to this. Now, we want to, the ones that passed, when I was inducted, the majority of the people from Revere went into the 182nd Infantry, which was part of the 26th Yankee Division. 16 of us from Revere, plus others from the other cities and towns around there, ended up in Company I, 101st Infantry. When Pearl Harbor was bombed, the 182nd was sent to the Pacific. I don't know how many know this, but they are the only division that do not have a number. They are known as the Americal Division. They fought with honor and distinction in the Pacific. Now, being here after 9 months in, Pearl Harbor came. We were supposed to be in for 1 year. So naturally, everybody was told that no one was getting discharged. Because ironically, while we were on maneuvers before Pearl Harbor in North Carolina, an order came down, anyone 28 years and older could get out of the Army. And my CO at the time said, let's wait till we get back to camp. The paperwork will go through much quicker. So those men that were 28 and over, when Pearl Harbor came, did not get out. The 26th Division was, at the time, a square division. I don't know the history of, I know it's changed throughout the years. A square division had 4 infantry regiments. The 26th Yankee Division had the 101st, which was the 101st, the 104th, the 181st, and the 182nd Infantry. When Pearl Harbor came, it became a triangle because they took the 182nd out. When we were at Fort Jackson, because they were moving the divisions around all over the country so that the Germans would not know where the troops were. They decided to take the 181st out. And that's why the 328 was formed. And they took was formed with 1/3 men from the 101st, 1/3 men from the 104th, and 1/3 men of draftees. And we went around with one thing again. Now cadres were taken out and put into the divisions that were going overseas to bring them up to wartime strength. As it was, I went, sent in January of 1944, I was sent to the 30th Division, which was got to be known as the workhouse of the Western Front. Also, many do not know, everybody knows of their own division, I guess, or regiment and everything there. The 30th Division became known by the Germans as Roosevelt's SS troops. The 30th Division had 6 Congressional Medal of Honors. winners. 3 posthumously. 3 came home alive. 1 I met at a 30th Division reunion. You would never know he was not but an ordinary man the way he acted. And as it was, God willing, I was able to come home alive, in one piece. And today, my heart is out to these veterans coming home, because I don't think that anybody is greeting them. Anybody is opening up the doors to give them jobs and try to. I will say this from the bottom of my heart, and this is no reflection to any politician or one thing or the other, that nobody cares what. They are out there struggling, and nobody knows what it is, because these wars today are nothing. The World War II, to me, was nothing but a piece of cake compared to what these kids have to go through and how they fight. There they are walking down the streets in these foreign countries, and they don't know if whoever they are passing by does not have a bomb strapped to them, ready to pull the pin and blow them, everybody to bits. I can't say anything of that. Any of you veterans, if you had been in combat or anything, you can speak your piece. I would really love to know how it's been with the other wars. Thank
George,
you.
George, excuse me. We have a Vietnam veteran, Bruce Dobson, here. We have Bob Haas, who's a veteran. We have Fred Sannella, who went around and put flags on the graves of the veterans. We have Eileen Merullo, who's a veteran, and she's looking for something. Eileen, would you like to tell the people what it is that you would like to do?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for everything you did. I appreciate that very much. I was at World War II myself at the Walter Reed Hospital as a physical therapist working working on amputees, and I'm happy you didn't have an amputee. What my purpose is, I'm looking for the names of women veterans of World War II so that we can erect a memorial to them on the Legion lawn. So if you know any woman veteran of World War II or the name of any woman veteran, I'd appreciate it if you would send the information to the Senior Center, and then I'll get it from there. All right? Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. And then,
One thing, chick, talking of that, you were grave registration, Bob?
Excuse me?
You.
Right.
You were grave registration, you said?
no, I said that he went around and put the flags on the graves of the veterans at
Freddie,
Woodlawn.
One thing I forgot to mention. When I was in Nancy, France, there was a grave registration close by. And I walked in there and asked the men in there if I could look at the names. And I ran across 3 names of men that I had served with in company in 101st Infantry. And one came from Revere, a very, very close friend of mine, and that was Frank Alfino. He was killed in action November 17, 1944, if I remember. I visited the graves, and it was an honor and a pleasure. I wish I could have done more, because Frankie and I were very, very close. And another man from Revere that went on into the Air Corps, that he had a book written lately about himself by his nephew did it, was William Lanza. The book is shot down over Italy or in Italy. How he ever made it back, because because he was 60 days or more behind the German lines. This was in Italy he was shot down. I guess why he was able to get to there was because he could speak Italian. And if he ever got caught by the Germans, I believe they would have shot him as a spy because he had civilian clothes on with him. But somehow or other he made it back to Italy and made it back to the lines. He told me a little bit about it, how he made it back. Because when he made it back, he was told and sworn not to mention anything about it, because he would have mentioned names, and I guess at that time the Germans would have probably looked for those people and shot them and done one thing or the other. Now every war is different. I don't know if you saw action or not. If you did, your terrain was different than my terrain, or one thing and the other. And this is one thing that people do not understand. They watch these movies, they see these things going on, one thing and the other, and they look at this here. One never knows what he or she will do when they are confronted with something. There are some that take over, and there are some that have to be led by the hand. That's beside the point of it. No, I'm no hero. I called, I did my duty as best as possible I could do. Other people would have said, one thing and the other. God knows the things that I had. Maybe it was because of the officers that I had, that I was in court-martial for certain things that I did, or one thing and the other.
Excuse me, Judge.
You know, it's hard to explain. If you went in there, I don't care if it's one day, because the first day we were in action, men died right then and there. They were killed, and some were wounded. I was fortunate. I got the so-called $1 million wound, enough to get me out of the front lines and not back in there again. I met men that I served with that went all the way through, from the day we started in there, right through Germany surrendered, and never got a scratch. In fact, I have a picture of one of them here. And he told me how many times when he was in the foxhole, the bullets were flying, that he would stick his hand up in the air, hoping to get hit so he could get out of the front lines. It's tough to explain. I would love to hear you. Believe me.
George, this is Bruce Dobson, who happens to be a Vietnam veteran. Could you just expand a little on your service, sir?
Good morning. I want to welcome the other veterans that are here this morning and welcome them home, and especially George. He might not consider himself a hero, but in my eyes he is. World War II. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I graduated from Immaculate in 1962, and I went in the service in '63. And I got into telecommunications. And in 1965, the end of '65, I volunteered to go over to Vietnam. And it was one of the only things that the Air Force did for me that I asked for. And they sent me over there in January of '66. And I was fortunate enough to be on an Air Force base where it was fairly secure. So I'm not going to sit here and tell war stories. But talking to the guys that I was over there with that were out on the front line with the 101st Airborne, the Screaming Eagles, and the Marines that I ran into, they lived in hell over there. As you can imagine, you've been through it. I was there for a year. I was at Phan Rang Air Force Base. It wasn't easy, you know. And when we came home, at least when I came home in January of 1967, we weren't treated too nice. And still, a lot of the guys that came back with scars. They came back with alcohol.
And Agent Orange, remember that?
They came back with drug-related problems. Agent Orange was mentioned back then, but it wasn't really, we didn't think much about it. And when the Vietnam veterans came home, we just wanted to get home and get back in our house and go to work and forget about what happened to us. And, you know, it was hard. Last July, a year ago this past July, I went to my primary care physician and I got a blood count. And he had me come back for another one. And what ended up happening is I developed CLL from Agent Orange 46 years after I was over there. Chronic lymphomic leukemia. And they ended up giving me 100% disability for it. And I read the obituaries every day. I look in the Boston Globe, and I look at the obituaries, and I look to see if they're Vietnam veterans. And a lot of them, I see 3 or 4 a day, and it'll say Vietnam veteran, and you go down to the end of the obituary page, the end of the what they say, and usually it's contribute to Dana-Farber. And when I see that, I know that obviously they came up with something related to Agent Orange. I go over to Dana-Farber every 6 months and I get my blood checked, and so far it's stable. There's nothing going on. But you know, I can identify with what you went through. I mean, that was horrific. And as you said, the veterans that do come home in all wars, and especially the guys in Iraq and Afghanistan, I can't imagine what they have to do. As you were saying, they're walking down the roads and they step on an IUD and get their legs blown off, their Humvees blown up. You know, we're not taking care of the veterans. They say they are, but they're not taking care of them. And something has to be done. I don't know what's going to happen. But the most tragic thing I see with what's going on with the wars today is they're having the guys go back for 2 or 3 tours over there.
Terrible.
You know, and they're
Terrible.
coming back with PTSD, they're coming back with head injuries, and these are our the young guys, and the girls are over there too, you know. One of the, I believe she's a senator or a rep out in the Midwest. I think she had her leg blown off over there, and she ended up just getting elected to either the House or the Senate. So I'm just glad to be here today to try to give a little bit of insight. What I'd like to do right now, if you give me a second, there's 6 Vietnam veterans that are on the Vietnam Wall in Washington, D.C. There's Robert Blaze, there's Stephen Penta, there's Walter Olinsky, there's James Delmont, there's Arthur LeGros, and there's Alan O'Brien. Those are 6 veterans, Vietnam veterans from Revere, that are on the wall in Washington. And as all Vietnam veterans and anybody that's been in the service, you know, they're my brothers. You know, thank you.
Thank you, Bruce, for that beautiful, sad story.
Thank you.
Before we continue, I would like to say one thing, and this is to you, Mrs. Merullo. Did you, when you expanded on the women, did you tell them how to contact you or give them your telephone number so they can reach you if they know of any women that are World War II veterans?
Well, I think the best way to do it is to send the information to the senior center, and I'll get it from there.
That would be 25 Winthrop Avenue, Revere, Mass. 02151. We have 2 more special guests here, and I will introduce this gentleman on my right first. He was the one, he's Councilor Bob Haas, and he saved our senior center. He's also a veteran. He has a little plaque here that the senior center helps the troops, and this was sent to us by NATO. And without further ado, Bob, the rest.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank George and Bruce for their service to this country. Most people have no clue what you people went through. They may see a photo op in the paper, etc. But, you know, as far as the city's concerned, we want to thank you for your service. Well done. I served in the U.S. Army Reserve. I spent 1963, we went in, went to Camp Drum, as most of the Army people have gone, for 8 years. I basically am somewhat proud of our city because without question, our city compared to a lot of the other cities in and around Revere, we have really stepped forward in honoring our citizens, especially our veterans past and present. Just last Friday, we had the Paul Revere School puts on a tremendous display of veterans, honoring our veterans, and they have a great classy program. Also, when you get into Flag Day, we have Freddie Sannella, Nikki Boa, Ira Novoselsky, they go out and put the flags in the various graves. These are things that people have no clue what's going on. And as far as the gentleman to my left, Morris, Operation Troop Support, we are one of the most active cities in supporting of this fundraiser where we take in money and we send all of our troops away, gift packages, etc. Those are things that people really are not aware of. But listening to George and Bruce, it brings back memories that what we're saying here today, I wish could be displayed in our school system to let the youth of our community, know what really sacrifices you gentlemen have really given to the city, to the state, to the Commonwealth of Mass, and also to the federal government. Because if it weren't for your support, we would not be here today in a democracy that we all live for.
Thank you, Bob, very much. Before we close, I want to introduce a gentleman who's part of the school committee, Mr. Fred Sannella, who helped us put flags on the graves of the veterans that are buried in the cemeteries. But Mr. Sannella can tell you exactly what the kids at the school do for the community and for the veterans. Mr. Sannella, it's yours.
Morris, thank you. And likewise, I would like to congratulate our veterans and for the stories. I thought, I had taught history and I thought I knew most of it, but to hear it on the actual experience level, and Mr. Tirro, for 93 years of age, I can't remember my phone number. And you rattle off divisions, subdivisions,
I know it.
and the whole thing, and I mean, you have to be commended for that.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Merullo, I would like to offer a name, and I'm sure being a former teacher yourself, Sabina Reggioni
Wonderful.
was my nurse at the Wayland School, and some of her stories were lingering and humorous and serious, but having lived through it, and from a woman's point of view, usually in that era, they weren't combatants, they were behind the lines and everything else, but they saw the horrors of war.
Right. She was at Pearl Harbor when it happened.
So she kept us all going on that end of it. And then I myself, along with Mr. Haas had made reference to, Revere is seeped in tradition for our veterans. From the Rumney Marsh Burial Ground, of which I was chairman of the Historical Commission at the time, renovated and restored it. Mr. Bower in the process of doing it now. We have revolutionary people who served from Revere. You go up to City Hall, there's a plaque of veterans from World War I. What you're referring to in front of the Legion building to a memorial to women, they do have a monument there now at Memorial Day services. They read off the names of the different wars, the different veterans groups, and there are names that are on these plaques that most people have no idea. For example, the old Max Achenbach School that was on Park Avenue, he's a World War I veteran. And Janvern Ave, which is now, and in my own family, my mother-in-law had sent 3 boys to World War II. Only my brother-in-law Tommy Hill came back, and memorial, as Mr. Haas made reference to, was James Hill, which Hill Park is named after. And with the new school going on there was controversy as to how would we remember a veteran? Would it be forgotten? Compromise came up with the school will be named after him. So that will continue to memorialize a World War II veteran and a Bronze Star honoree. So I myself, on the perimeter, feel honored to be a part of Operation Troop Support, Operation Flags on Memorial Day. We go to some graves that no one attends them. They're forgotten. But in our minds and in the minds of the citizenry of Revere, they will never be without at least recognition from the community. And Revere has, you go to St. Anthony's Church, the right-hand side, there's memorial to veterans, there's marbles, the side on the right-hand side, and the Brandano family. I mean, names that were very prominent in Revere. Revere, like most communities, is changing, but it's nice to know that we still have a foot in the past as well as a foot in the future. And I can only be eternally grateful to all who have served, whether it be from Revolutionary War up to Afghanistan, Iraq. I personally am grateful, and on behalf of the citizens of Revere, extend our congratulations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sannella. Did you want to say?
Let me interject this here.
Okay, we only got a few minutes left, but go ahead.
Freddie, one thing I would like to see back in the school system, because when I was at grammar school, attended the Porterville School, and up in high school, I loved ancient history. I loved reading about the Roman Empire and so forth and so on. As I understand today, and I think this is part of the problem about veterans in the United States, I can't talk for any other country. They don't have any inkling at all of what went on in all these wars. World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, the Iraq, Iran. They read this and one thing and the other. They don't care. Aerosmith just had a
Concert.
and 1,000 people turned out, they say, to see them. Let a veteran walk off the plane in uniform. They ignore him. People in this country do not care. They only think of themselves. Yes, I'm living out my life. I hope I'm shooting for 100 regardless of what. That's how mine is.
Freddie, excuse me, Mr. Tirro, tell him how old you are, really, please.
93.
God bless you.
Okay.
My mother just turned 100, so
Yeah.
we're working for it.
I have a brother who's going to be 96 in December.
Jesus.
Good, great.
Okay?
Good genes.
And he's a World War II veteran. He was in the combat engineers.
Well, just to kind of elaborate a little on that, when I was at the Wayland School, we used to take the 8th grades to Washington, D.C. Basically, the highlight of the trip was the Tomb of the Unknowns and the Vietnam Memorial, and they did rubbings.
Right.
And actually, Mr. LeGros, whose sister was a teacher at the Lincoln School, the solemn atmosphere of young adults, it was moving. In answer to your question is, it's still taught. Timeline is difficult for children, but the curriculum, as your daughter can attest to as former deputy superintendent, the federal government and the state are mandating certain things that something has to be kind of rounded off. That is the tragedy, and you're 100% correct. Due diligence is not there, and it should be there. We will
Freddie?
see what we can do to institute more.
George, excuse me, we're going to be running out of time soon, but she wanted to say something.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just one other thing. You hear all these wonderful stories and the heroes and all, but you never hear of one woman. Never. There's no memorials to any women. And if the men didn't have the woman to hold their hand when they lost their leg or they lost their arm, it would be even sadder. So please, if you know someone, send the names to the senior center and we'll be happy to report them.
I would
Thank you.
suggest to you, okay,
After
If
it gets done,
possible.
we'll close the show.
try to get this
It's nice.
into as many newspapers in the surrounding cities and towns, plus the Revere papers, and if possible, get it on TV, get it on the news, get somebody from there. It has to be publicized, because, like I said, people don't care unless maybe if it's shown to somebody. A few may say, gee, I think of this
Yeah.
yesterday, and so forth.
Absolutely.
That's a good
Right.
idea, Mr. Tirro, but I think we have to close now, so what I have to do
Go ahead.
is say, I want to thank each and every one of you for coming here and telling your story, and I'd like to introduce you one more time before we close. And this is Eileen Merullo, George Tirro, Fred Sannella, Bruce Dobson, and on my right, Councilor Bob Haas. And I want to thank the people of Revere. God bless them. God bless our troops. And God bless the United States of America. And thank you all for coming. And thank you folks out there for listening. Thank you.